Welcome to episode 266 of Growth Marketing Toolbox. I'm your host, Nicholas Scalise, and today I'm joined by Jeff Sauer. Jeff is the founder of DataDriven, and he's also a business coach, a blogger at Jeffalytics, a lecturer, and a 5-time Inc. 5000 award-winning agency owner. He's a firm believer in data-driven marketing, and Jeff was named as one of the top 25 most influential PPC experts, and his work has been featured in many industry publications and best of lists. He has had over 50,000 digital marketers enroll in his Google certification programs and has delivered over 100 keynote presentations and workshops in 20 countries. Jeff, thank you so much for joining me on Growth Marketing Toolbox. How's everything going?
Everything is going great, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk about data-driven marketing.
I'm looking forward to it. You know, as I was saying right before we started, I'm a huge fan of what you're doing. I've learned so much from you back in the day when I was getting started. I remember listening to your podcast all the way back in like 2015, and it's amazing to see your brand evolve into data-driven and just, you know, all this cool stuff that you're doing now. For anyone who's not familiar with what you're doing and what you focus on, obviously we did a little bit of an intro there, but give us more of the story of what you're doing and how you got started in this industry.
Yeah, for sure. So I got started with a computer science degree and a .com crash. I wanted to become a computer programmer, but there was no jobs at the time. It was right when everything was starting to switch to the web, but the web was sort of unsure. So I just took whatever job I could get, and eventually had to end up creating the job that I wanted. So I took a job I could get as like a systems administrator, and then I had nights and weekends, everything I could do, learning how to make websites, eventually how to drive people to websites, you know, generate traffic, and then finally how to analyze and make money from websites, which is more of the analytics and monetization efforts that I'm more known for today. And so that was about a 2 or 3 year journey from when I had this dream to the point where I actually said this is my career. And that was actually in the mid 2000s.
Wow.
During that time, I latched on with an agency, and that agency grew like crazy. As you mentioned, we were on the Inc. 5000 5X times. The agency actually exited last year, so I'm no longer involved in the agency world. Well, somewhere along the time when I was working at the agency, doing their work for clients, like a lot of Fortune 500 type clients, really making recommendations to them about how they can generate more leads, how they can get more cash flow from their business, how online is going to be everything for them. A lot of times they didn't want to listen to me. They didn't really respect that. They said, okay, well, we're making all this money in the offline world. Right. Online is just something we're going to throw a little bit of money at, but we don't really believe in it yet. And I sort of got tired of it. I sort of got tired of having these recommendations, of being what I feel was on the cutting edge and doing it and doing all these recommendations and sometimes implementing, sometimes just getting a no. Yeah. And I said, okay, well, if any of these people would just do this, they'd make a killing in the online world. And so instead of doing it for them, I decided to do it for myself. And so in 2013, I went on my own and I said, I'm going to start an online business. I don't really know what the online business is going to be. I have some talents here and there. There's a lot of different possibilities. And I landed the plane, or I arrived at doing online education. The reason why I did that is because I had been teaching in a classroom for several years at that point. I was teaching at a university even. And I said, okay, well, online education is where things are going. Nobody really wants to sit for a long class when they can just pick up a skill in a couple hours a day, a couple hours a week, right? So I just started just going all in on that. And I went all in on it before I really had any proof that it would work and before it was successful. And so I basically middled for a while, trying to create this training business until eventually it took off. Probably right around the time that you got introduced to what I was doing. When I started to build an audience, started to say, here's what I am in this world. And ever since then, since around 2015, when I started to have some initial success, I'm a full-time educator now, a full-time educator, marketer, and person who helps people make data more accessible for them. So that's like the nutshell version of what got me here. Basically, always trying to solve new problems. And I think the biggest problem to solve is, how do you make people comfortable with data so they can make their marketing better?
Yeah, it's a complex topic. And I know, you know, people, they approach it in all different ways. What I've always loved about your style is it's the perfect blend of showing and also explaining and getting into the technical details, but also sort of giving examples. And so I think, you know, that's probably why you've had so much success, among other things. So your brand is called DataDriven. This is a term that gets thrown around from time to time in marketing circles. Hey, we need to be data-driven. What does it mean, in your words, to be a data-driven marketer these days?
Yeah, I love that you asked me this question because you're sort of T-balling me up or softballing me up to really try to knock this one out of the park. I actually think that being data-driven is not a good idea. I think that
Really?
data-driven blindly is a overused term. I think that it's a widely misunderstood term. And if you were to be completely data-driven, you would make some terrible decisions. So for example, if you looked at the data and saw that, well, I'm not even going to get into current events, but if you looked at data around anything, any data, right? And you made a conclusion off of one day of data, you would probably go in a direction, you'd just go into something, you'd be like the first one into battle, and you probably would get, you wouldn't like the outcome of what's happening with you, right? Mm-hmm. Right. So being data driven is actually, it's like, it's fuel for an engine, but I think that a better term, and I wish that the domain name were easier to get and it was shorter, it's called being data informed. And so data driven means, in some ways, it means you just do whatever the data tells you. I actually think you should be data informed. You should use data as a way of making a decision point. You should use it to weigh in on your decisions. But a lot of times you need to also have this gut instinct, this strategy, this idea of where you want to go in order for the data to get you there, right? So looking at a Google Analytics account and setting up your goals wrong and then seeing you have a 100% conversion rate does not mean you should steer the ship towards something because you have a 100% conversion rate because you set up goals wrong.
Right.
What it means is you should understand that and say, okay, well, what does this mean in the context of what my business is trying to achieve? And so being data-driven to me is definitely the point where you are saying, what does the data say? Not only that, what does the data say, but what is the data we're collecting? Now, you had mentioned that part of what I do is that I am not afraid to roll up my sleeves and get into the technical part. Part of it's because I have a technical degree or I have training in the technical part. The other thing is that being data-driven means understanding that this data does require a technical component. It is technology in order to collect what you're doing. And so you need to get that right. Otherwise, you're going to make the wrong decisions, right? So being data-driven blindly, not something I recommend. Being data-informed and then understanding what makes up the data you collect and what that means in the context of a successful business, a successful marketing campaign is really where I think the intersection is. And so to me, it's knowing that data is important. That's a table stakes. You have to know that data is important. If you don't know that by now, then I'm sorry. Like that's something we need to convince. But data doesn't need to be something that you follow blindly. Data is a way to sweeten the pot. It's like salt in cooking, right? Data is something that will make it better. Like, yeah, if you want to make a dish, if you want to make pizza, you don't really necessarily need to have the data to tell you that pizza is good. You've had it enough times, you like it, right? But if you need to know, but data is a very important ingredient to getting it right? So it's the technique, I guess, around making your marketing better.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And I love that phrase. Don't be data-driven, be data-informed. I think that's a fantastic takeaway. Another thing you talk about is something called the small data movement. What is this? How does it relate to being data informed? And yeah, what is the small data movement?
Yeah, so this is one of those ones where I've struggled for a long time because I've been at almost every level of data in an organization. I've been the only person in a company responsible for data, and I've been somebody who was part of a team of hundreds of people responsible for data in an organization. And when I started out with more the enterprise level, more like towards the end. And then when I started my own business, I was like, man, I'm not really being data driven because I'm not doing all the stuff that I did for this multi-billion-dollar company. I'm falling behind. And then I realized, okay, well, that's not the expectation. That was my expectation. That was my past. But the present is to get enough data to make you to the next level, right? And so I was like, okay, well, how do I explain this to people that even if you're reading about cutting edge, big data techniques, data science teams, learning new languages, data warehousing, BigQuery, stuff like that, that's only really for about 1% of the companies that are out there, the companies that have gotten to a certain point where they can make those investments. The rest of us, everybody else, probably needs to follow a progressive place where they use only enough data to make it to the next level that they're in. And so I created this concept called the small data model to explain to somebody, no matter where you're at today, you don't necessarily need to follow what everybody else is doing. You need to do what's best for you. And so it actually is an acronym. S stands for a solo or solopreneur. M stands for micro, like a really small team. A can mean two different things. It can mean autonomous, or it can mean, let's just call it autonomous. That's in a team that's like more autonomous with what they're doing. The next one, L, is leveraged. It means that you're using consultants or hiring consultants in order to get even further along. And then the last one is leading edge. And that's when you're doing these experimental techniques, when you're using data science and big data in order to get where you're going. And so this is cool because some people are like, okay, well, I'm reading about all these things, or I need to go and get a data science degree. When in reality, if your company is really only doing a couple $1 million in revenue and you're growing fast, maybe that's overkill. Maybe you don't need that yet. And so I'm just trying to put it in its place where you say, okay, add more data only once you pass one step and go to the next one, instead of trying to do all the things, instead of trying to drink from the fire hose. Because there's a lot of things that go along with it. The amount of data you collect is freeing if you follow the small data model, because you don't need to collect as much, most likely. The other thing is that the size of your team is freeing because you don't necessarily need a big team, and it's not expected you're going to have a big team if you're just getting started. And the final thing that I really like to say about this thing, the really nice part about it, is that you can grow into the next level as you want to. You can grow as you go along, and you can add resources as you go, but everything builds on top of it. And so the cool thing is, like I say, instead of having 10 KPIs when you're a solopreneur, you just need one. You just need one KPI, and that's money. Money in the bank, your bank account. Simple. Best analytics tool in the world. When you're a micro company, you need top of funnel, bottom of the funnel. That's it. What's your top of funnel activity? What's your bottom one? Once you master that, then you can move on to the next level. When you're an autonomous and you're starting to hire consultants, or you're starting to build out a team, then you need to do full funnel. You need to figure out every step of the way, get all your leaks out of the way, right? And then when you get further, you might need multiple teams to function at the same time, multiple disciplines to move forward. And so you just choose the team, and you choose the tactics for where you're at now, not where you need to be.
That's amazing. That makes so much sense. I never even thought of it like that. You don't need to go directly to, try to mimic what these Fortune 500 companies are doing, because it can be overwhelming. I mean, we've worked with a lot of clients that love to collect data, and they don't do anything with it. How many, you've probably seen it where, they just sort of sit on this hoard of Google Analytics data and, all these different tests they've run, but they've never actually learned something from it. And it's just this paralysis of analysis. Speaking of that, speaking of all these different sources of data, there's so many different things. Data can encompass so many things. We could talk about qualitative analytics, quantitative analytics. I think the go-to for most people is probably Google Analytics. At least that's how I first learned of you. And I remember taking your course back in, I think it was 2015, your Google Analytics course. Do you still think that that's at the center of a good data habit for businesses? Or what are your thoughts on where Google Analytics sits in that ecosystem for most businesses? And then what other sources of data should businesses be looking at?
Yeah, I like this one because for a long time I've said Google Analytics is the central nervous system for any marketing thing. So it's best in class at a few features, but it's often the backup system for a lot of things you do. So it's not the best in class search reporting system in the world. Your Google Ads or your Google Search Console is best in class for that, right? It's not the best in class for e-commerce reporting. Your e-commerce system is best at that. But Google Analytics gives you some redundancy. It's maybe not best in class to track all of the traffic generation things you do, although it is for like email campaigns and campaign tracking and stuff like that. But your email marketing tool is probably going to tell you better how many people opened and clicked on your emails. And so it's just this place where you can mash everything together, and you can have a pretty complete picture of your marketing data overall. And not only that, but it's exportable now into Google Data Studio. So if I were to choose only one tool to use, I would choose Google Analytics because it's free, powerful, and it sort of encompasses everything. It's a central nervous system of what you do. But it doesn't mean that, I just said that basically it's really not best in class at a lot of different things, right? It's not the best at these other functions. It's just that it coordinates them unlike other tools, right? Google did a really good job of integrating these things together. So you have one backup source of truth for everything you do. So I still love it. But I also, when I want to do in-depth analysis, or when I really want to make sure that I'm doing this the right way, I'll often consult on these other systems. I just give you a few examples. Advertising systems, I'll look at that to see what they're saying to me, and I'll use their conversion tracking. Email marketing, same thing. If I were to do influencer marketing, I would track the influencer marketing system I had, not necessarily Google Analytics, but I would use it as a backup in every one of these cases.
Very smart. And tied to this question of Google Analytics is the upcoming rollout of Google Analytics 4 or GA4. So for our listeners who are not I'm sure most people have already heard, if you're in marketing, you sort of hear the bombshell that, hey, we have less than a year to migrate over to GA4, the complete rebuild or the next evolution of Google Analytics. Tell us, what are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on the rollout? It seemed, in my opinion, correct me if I'm wrong, that I thought most marketers probably thought they were going to have a little more time. Google seemed to speed things up a little bit more and put this deadline, I believe it's July of next year,
Yes.
2023. What are your thoughts on the whole situation with Google Analytics 4 and the rollout?
Yeah, so like the 5 stages of grief. I think we're all going to be going through those at different points with GA4. I'm already at acceptance.
Okay.
I'm done with it, but I've also been sort of a canary in the coal mine since last year, saying, "Hey, you know what? If you can't beat them, join them." And I had some insider information that it wasn't just going to be like you switch over when you're ready. It's going to be a clean severed ties. A lot of people were telling me that, who were under NDA, were like, guys, Jeff, this is not, they're not going to give you a choice. Google's going to do this. And I was like, really? I couldn't believe it. But then once they said that to me, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to embrace it and realize that it's not a question of whether you like it or not, or whether you're happy with it or not. It's like, either this is there or you got to do something else. Right. And so it's funny. I'm actually compiling. I didn't want to like just recommend GA4 as opposed to GA3 and saying implement that without doing some kind of research and some kind of comparison. So I've gone through, and I haven't published this yet, but maybe by the time this interview goes out, I've looked at and evaluated 34 competitors to Google Analytics.
Wow, I didn't know there were that many.
Yeah, there are that many. Some of them are specialty tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush. Some of them are analytics tools.
Adobe
some
Analytics.
Enterprise. Some are open source. But yeah, there might be more than 34 by the time that I wrap up the research. And based on criteria of what most people want, and I'm putting words in people's mouths, but I think what most people want is free and easy to implement. And you're going to find out that if you did, you look at 34 other tools, 33 of them are not either free or easy to implement. And so you're going to end up with this thing where you're going to have to pay money or you're going to pay a consultant. And so GA4 is still at the right intersection of what made GA3 or Universal Analytics or just GA in general so popular. And so it's like, okay, well, I don't like how Google marketed it. I don't like necessarily the way that the charts look. I think the charts are ugly compared to the other one. I don't like that what I'm used to seeing and I've been doing for 15 years in regular Google Analytics, like a landing page report, isn't in there right now.
Right. Yeah.
But the thing to realize is that no change of Google Analytics has ever been smooth. I didn't like Universal Analytics, which we all applaud now. I thought it sucked when it first came out for like 2 years. Like, it just that the timeline got shrunk, so we don't have like people are going to go through the different stages of grief, right? Like, and I've been now through this for about 18 months, and I finally came to acceptance. Some people, their 18 months is kicking off right now, and they're going to have to come to acceptance a lot quicker, right? So it's not so much that it's that it's good or bad. It's just that it's not quite as good as Universal, and the timeline was shrunk before features were rolled out, and that's the most frustrating piece. It doesn't have one-to-one reporting parity between Universal and GA4, but the inkling, the whispering in my ears behind the scenes, like the whispering that it's going to go away, GA3, is that's now the thing. So the first year and a half was getting the infrastructure in place, so they could actually collect the data structure, the events-based model, as opposed to the several different hit types that they had in Universal Analytics. They got the back end going. They can collect data. They can do it at scale. They can get the processing down. They're doing that. And then they're going to upgrade the front end and make it so that a lot of the things that we know and love about GA Universal will be there in GA4. And that's my hope. Over the next year, those things will start to show up. And then you'll be like, oh, yeah, it's not so bad.
Yeah. And, now's the time to start switching, right? Because you can run both GA4 and Universal Analytics in parallel. And with the deadline approaching for July of 2023, if you want to have a year of historical data, right, you want to get that installed pretty soon. So what advice 100%. Do you have for someone who's on the fence and maybe thinking, oh, I don't have to worry about it until July of 2023. That's not the right way to look at it, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's multiple deadlines in the world, right? And one of them is by the end of Q2 of 2022, you should, if you want to have a year-over-year comparison, you should install GA4, at least the base. And the cool thing is that if you have Google Tag Manager in place and you use what they call enhanced measurement, you can get maybe the 80-20 of analytics right there. Okay. So if you just do those two things, you're 80-20ing it. And I would recommend that. And then if you want to get deeper and you want to set up goals and you want to set up custom events, custom dimensions, then you might want to do a course or read up as much as you can. I have a course on it. There's a lot of other courses out there about GA4. I'm doing like migration workshops. Basically, all the educators, including myself, have sort of pivoted to say, okay, well, this is the number one thing we need to talk about right now. We need to talk. We need to do this thing, and we need to do it soon so that you don't lose that year of data. Now, beyond that, I mean, that's the urgency right there. Now, what happens if July 13th of 2022 you decide I'm going to do it? You can still do some year-over-year comparisons. It just gets a lot harder. You're going to have to do things like get the data into Data Studio, and you're going to have to connect the GA3 source and the GA4 source, and they're going to be on different charts. You can see it, but different charts, different data tables. Not only that, but also Google said that within or at least 6 months or around 6 months after they stop collecting data, which is at July 1st, 2023, they are going to stop allowing you to run reports. So the reports are going to get shut down too, which a lot of people don't realize. And that creates a whole nother slew of problems. You won't be able to do, looking at your 2010 data at all, unless you take action. Now, there are some stuff that's going to be developed in the next year. From what I understand, I've had some good conversations about this, about how you can maybe dump out your data into BigQuery, or you can dump it out into a spreadsheet so you can get that historical data. You won't lose it entirely, but that's going to have to be in your own hands as opposed to being in the hands of Google. Now, when it's in your own hands, that means that it either costs money to maintain a BigQuery instance. It costs storage on your Google Drive to have the sheets. It takes storage on your computer. It takes integration issues, who's going to get access to it or not. It's going to cost you time, which is money, right? Because you're going to it's going to be really slow. Or you didn't anticipate everything you wanted to look at, and suddenly you don't have access to it anymore. And so this is a real thing, right? Getting your data out. And that's something where I think it's going to take me a year and a half in order to show people how to do that so that everybody knows that it's there. So there's almost no risk right now in just putting it in place and 80-20ing it. There's more risk if you wait, so you don't have that clear 1 year break. And there's even more risk if you wait until the end drop dead date. Yeah.
Absolutely. You mentioned your course. I wanted to ask you about this because this is a question that I get asked all the time from my clients is, how do I learn about GA4? There's some YouTube videos, obviously, but if someone wants something more in depth, what exactly are you offering in terms of helping someone learn GA4?
Yeah, so I created a course to explain. It was under the assumption that you've already done GA3 or that you've had it in place for a while, so you know things like campaigns, event tracking, goals, and stuff like that, so that you have the basics. And it just shows you what's different in GA4 and how you can implement what you're used to seeing in GA3 in GA4. So it's stuff like, how do you get the code in place? How do you access even stuff like BigQuery where you can query out? How do you set up conversions? What do you do with custom events, which are an important piece of it? How do you customize the interface? How do you use some of the exploring reports? Basically, like, what's different in this tool? I've had a universal analytics course for a while. You've taken it.
Absolutely.
I've been teaching that in a classroom since 2011. So I've taught over 10,000 people regular Google Analytics. So this one's more of like a companion piece. It's saying, okay, well, if you've already got my philosophy of regular, here's how you upgrade to the next one.
Nice. So obviously I want to ask you about tools. We can't go through an episode of Growth Marketing Toolbox without covering some analytics tools. So what are your favorite data-driven marketing tools at the moment?
Yeah, so I definitely love the Google suite of tools. It's like sort of where I've cut my teeth and where I've spent the most time teaching. So that includes Analytics, Data Studio, Google Tag Manager, especially. So those ones are those are my bread and butter and the ones that I love the most. There's other tools that are outside of Google that are also quite nice. I just pull up a few.
Sure.
If you're building funnels, I really like Geru, Geru, and it helps you map out your funnels. They have some templates, so you can do that. If you're into what I think funnels are a big part of growth marketing, there's a competitor to them called Funnelytics, which I've used as well, and it's nice. I like audience tracking tools. Some of the classics like Hotjar and Crazy Egg, they allow you to do scroll tracking, heat mapping, where people are using your site. It's a way to create data out of something that's more nebulous. You're basically taking somebody's session on your site and boiling it down into data. So you're taking qualitative and turning it into somewhat quantitative. Site surveys, like Hotjar has a little 1-question survey where you can ask questions. I found a lot of value in that. I do a lot of stuff with, e-commerce reporting, even just running reports inside of my WooCommerce dashboard. We're built on WooCommerce. Any e-commerce system you can do some reporting on and get some insights out of. I just did a workshop at our DataDriven with a guy who does PPC automation. And so I just discovered about 30 or 40 PPC tools that make you more efficient with Google Ads.
Wow.
One was called Speed PPC. It helps you build campaigns more quickly. The instructor is the founder of something called PPC Samurai.
Okay.
And that's a really cool one. And then he has a companion software that goes along with it. That's more of like adjusting for your budgets. Why can't I remember the name of it right now? I'm embarrassed now.
Yeah, there's so many PPC tools these days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there are so many of them. We're doing a workshop. Like I like the tool thing is so interesting, right? Like, you probably found me on AppSumo. So AppSumo has all these different tools, and then I put my course on there, and I attracted all these people who are really into like the tools and stuff like that. But I love going on to AppSumo to see what's next. And then a few of them make it into being the software that we use today, right? So I think that's a really cool way to go. So for example, I'm doing a workshop in I don't know when this will come out, but I'm doing a workshop on ad creatives, how to create ads, video ads and image ads and animated GIFs and stuff like that. And there's probably 30 tools for that we're sort of going through. So generally I have a newsletter where I mention like a tool every single week. And I just, I either try something or I am aware of it, and then I get recommended to me. I've honestly written down and sent out my newsletter since 2013 was when I first sent out the newsletter. And I've probably recommended 300, 400 tools as a result of that, because there's just so many out there that it's really, I don't even have time to try them all. I really just look at their marketing and try to think of the promise of what this delivers. And then would that be valuable for somebody in a position that needs it, right? So
yeah, there's a lot of tools. I do the same thing with my newsletter. I try to put about 4 tools in there every week. You mentioned Hotjar and Crazy Egg. One other thing I wanted to mention or ask you before we wrap up, I know Microsoft is actually trying to get into that space. They have a new product called Microsoft Clarity. I don't know if you've tried it or heard about it. And I've always seen, Google Analytics. Google owns sort of the quantitative side of analytics. I don't know if you'd call it a qualitative tool, or it's a qualitative tool trying to transform the data into a quantitative tool, or But anyways, what are your thoughts on sort of the interplay between what Google is doing with Google Analytics and what Microsoft is now trying to do with the qualitative side of things with Clarity?
Yeah, I have not rolled up my sleeves all that much with it, but it's been recommended to me more and more. Like basically, I can't go through a conversation without hearing it come up. And so we're actually going to be talking about it more in the data-driven community, just to sort of explore it and see what's going on. So I like having competition. I like anything that will give you the opportunity. It's one of the 34 competitors to Google Analytics that we are going to be mentioning and evaluating. And so it's on the radar, but it's not something that I've really sunk my teeth into and been able to disseminate yet. So I think that's a good tip for everybody to check it out.
It's interesting.
And if I'm not, you could be on the cutting edge, because it's like, I don't know if I even heard of it this time last year, but it just keeps on coming up more and more in conversation. So they're getting some traction.
They're definitely doing something over there. It's something to keep your eye on.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So if our listeners want to check out your courses or get on your newsletter or just see what you're up to, where can they go to do all that?
Yeah, so datadrivenu.com will give them the ability to see all the courses, as well as sign up for our newsletter. We've been really publishing on YouTube more and more lately. So I'm doing a weekly video on YouTube. That's at youtube.com/c/Jeffalytics. And so I haven't changed that over to Data-Driven yet. It's still just Jeff, the brand, or the personality on there. Those are the 2 big ones. I do a weekly newsletter. And so you can get caught up with anything we're doing on those channels. I am looking to add some more channels in the next, and get better at them in the future. But right now, YouTube and our newsletter is definitely the way to find me.
Fantastic. And we will put links in the show notes for all of these resources. So you can simply hit the show notes button, or you can go to growthmarketingtoolbox.com/266 for episode 266 and get direct links to Jeff's website, the courses, the newsletter, the YouTube channel, all of that. Well, Jeff, thank you so much. It was an honor getting you on the show, and you shared some really important insights that I took some notes of. I'm going to try not to think of being data driven, but being data informed. I really like that takeaway, and you shared so much else. So yeah, thank you again. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciated this, and I really enjoyed our conversation. And it's great to get here, and looking forward to anybody giving me feedback on this. If you want to ask me questions, I'm pretty widely available, so send me a note or something.
Fantastic. Thank you again, Jeff. Take care.